Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. I'm Sam Chui, an MBA student at Columbia Business School and co-president of the Green Business Club. I'm pleased to introduce our esteemed keynotes today. Jason Blake, Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at PepsiCo Beverages North America, PBNA. Jason leads PBNA's efforts to deliver its long-term sustainability targets across the full beverage portfolio. A $21 billion business in North America with an iconic portfolio including Pepsi, Gatorade, Tropicana, Bubbly, Mountain Dew, Life Water, and Rockstar, to name a few. Prior to his current role, Jason served as Vice President of Commercial at Delta Airlines, where he led the diversification and de-risking of the company's revenue model and led key innovation and business development initiatives. Prior to Delta, Jason has held a variety of roles at PepsiCo since 2007, including Senior Vice President of Customer Management and Channel Strategy for Frito-Lay North America, Regional Vice President for the Southeast region for Frito-Lay North America, and Senior Director of Customer Management for the Great Lakes region of PepsiCo Beverages company. And moderating our discussion will be Professor Vanessa Burbano, Assistant Professor of Management at Columbia Business School. Vanessa researches the strategic implications of socially responsible and irresponsible firm practices. Her research has been recognized with rewards, including those from the Strategic Management Society, the Alliance for Research on Corporate Sustainability, the Responsible Research and Management Award, the Impact for Investment Research Prize, the Berkeley Sustainable Business and Investment Forum, the International Association of Business and Society, and the Industry Studies Association. And now I'll hand it over to Vanessa, our panel moderator.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sam. Jason, such a pleasure to have you here with us. So to start it off, I thought it would be wonderful if you could share with us a little bit about your journey into sustainability and now your current role as Chief Sustainability Officer of PBNA.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. I'm honored, and it's a pleasure to be here today. And Sam, thanks for that gracious introduction. So, if I think about my journey to the role I am in today, I think I want to ground this in what we call the winning with purpose vision here at PepsiCo, and that starts with a mission of providing more smiles with every sip and every bite. Right. So we have this iconic portfolio of brands that, if you really think about it, can delight a consumer's day, can really brighten a moment. And it starts there. Right. And when you think of the simplicity of providing smiles to consumers, and then you say, OK, what does the career journey look like for somebody who's now responsible for sustainability? I would say it goes to a company that really puts at the center of what it does, the development of talent, right? So I joined PepsiCo, as Sam said, in 2007, fresh out of investment banking, and joined the corporate strategy and development group. Spent a couple of years looking at M&A transactions for the company, but then embarked on this career of robust general management, sales leadership, and really thinking about how we make, move, and sell the greatest products in the food and beverage space, right? So you spent time in the Frito business, spent time in the beverage business, both leading sales operations, right? So getting trucks out of our warehouses and distribution centers each and every day, but also engaging with some of our largest customers in the retail and away from home space. So the development was rapid. But I think, Columbia really prepared me for this career of being a general manager. And if I think about the role I'm in today, it's about bringing that, suite of experiences that I've had at PepsiCo and, as Sam mentioned, at Delta Airlines, to now bring a lens to sustainability where we can, have a keen focus on a couple key areas, right? Water, agriculture, climate, and packaging, and start to embed thinking into the business that allow us to pursue these ambitious goals we've got for the company. if you have read anything about our journey, we announced a really ambitious climate target a couple weeks ago, where we doubled our ambition to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030, and then also to be net zero by 2040, which importantly is 10 years ahead of the Paris Climate Accord. So we're on this journey. We really need to embed this in the fabric of what we do. And I think it's a tremendous honor that PepsiCo has asked me to lead this journey within, our North American beverage business, of which Sam mentioned the scale of that business.
That's wonderful. And can you tell us more about specifically what sustainability means to PepsiCo North America? And what specifically are now the sustainability priorities that you're focusing on?
Sure. If we can bring up the slide, I think it's really important to try to simplify this agenda, right? And say, what are the real priorities we're going against? And I think the real opportunity and responsibility we have as a company is to bring to bear our size, our scale, our reach, to drive meaningful change and build a sustainable food system, right? And that food and beverage system, right? So that's everything from the way we grow products, our usage of water, the packaging we put out into the environment, and hopefully build a circular economy with that packaging. We want products, as I said earlier, that bring smiles to consumers. We want to reduce our impact on the climate, eventually, as I said, by 2040, being net zero. And as I said, right, we think about people inside the company, right? So our employees, but also the people we have direct relationships with, i.e. our consumers. And we want those people to be delighted, have smiles with every time they interact with one of our brands. But we also want to bring prosperity to the communities that we serve. So as I said earlier, we raised our ambitions with respect to climate. You will see and hear from us throughout the course of 2021, raised and increased ambitions around things like agriculture here very soon, water and packaging. But we're on this journey, and this is how we think about the sustainability journey inside of PepsiCo.
Jason, so you mentioned a circular economy. Can you say a little bit more about sort of what you mean by circular economy, and then specifically what you think the implications are for the beverage sector more broadly, as well as for PepsiCo specifically?
Correct. Yeah. So I think it's an important concept to be crystal clear on, right? So if I think about a wonderful 20-ounce Pepsi, which I think everybody can agree is a delightful product, right? How do we get that bottle back into an economy where one bottle is recycled, brought back into the economy, and then remade into another bottle? And that is fundamentally the journey we're on with respect to packaging, right? We want to build, and we will build a portfolio of 100% recyclable, compostable, and biodegradable packaging. But we're doing that with a specific end, which is so that they can come back into circular economies. And if I just think about the plastics economy, U.S. collection rates are not anything anyone would be proud of, but we know we have a tremendous opportunity, if I go back to this climate ambition, to reduce our impact on climate, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by using more recycled content, right? We will raise our ambition to about 30. We want to reduce fossil fuel-based virgin plastics to about 25% of our portfolio in the near term. But that has some benefit. There's more benefit in us creating a circular economy around those plastics. So if I think about consumer experience, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, we spend a lot of time thinking about how we delight a consumer, right? The package has to be beautiful. The product inside the package has to delight their taste sensibilities. We want to create moments of enjoyment as you're consuming those products. But I think the consumer experience, the real opportunity for a company like PepsiCo is to extend that consumer experience and think about, how does the consumer believe, or what does the consumer believe about products that create circular economies or invest time and energy into creating these circular economies? I would say we can't do that alone. Obviously, we need the consumer engagement, but I think through coalitions with like the American Beverage Association and what we've launched with Every Bottle Back, as an industry to really catalyze change, we really can build what I believe is a circular economy. And it's basically saying packaging need never become waste, right? We need to give people access. They need the infrastructure to make sure they can recycle. And as I said, importantly, the consumer experience doesn't end at the point in which I finish that delightful Pepsi, but it extends through getting that bottle back into the economy so they can be remade into another bottle, right? So that's really an important thing that we'll work on. And as I said, we need consumers, but we also need to engage the industry and our peers in the industry to achieve that goal.
How aligned do you think your peers in the industry are with this idea, and how is sort of that worked out in engaging with the other beverage companies?
Sure. I think the campaign I just referenced that's being led by the American Beverage Association with all of our peer companies demonstrates, an aligned point of view around the importance of this, right? We know we've got a responsibility to the environment. We've got a responsibility to our consumers to build this circular economy. And I think what you've seen out of all the companies recently is, very publicly talking about our commitments, right? And as a public company, we know that we will be held accountable for delivering on those commitments. So I think there's significant alignment. I believe we will continue to push against these things and do them in a way that is collaborative, but also competitive, right? We want to lead here. We want to catalyze the industry, we being PepsiCo, but we know that everyone is pushing towards this circular economy around our packaging.
That's interesting. And so when you think about your brand portfolio, how do you think about embedding sustainability into the business and into sort of all aspects of the business and all the brands of the business?
Right. So I would tell you this is a big challenge for companies of our size, right? So can we show the portfolio of brands that we have? If I just take, brand Pepsi, for example, right? That's a global brand that touches billions of consumers each and every day. And embedding sustainability in our portfolio is about thinking about sustainability from the start, right? So we've created a program inside of the company, which we call Sustainable from the Start. And that is about building in sustainable thinking, right? Our impact on the climate, our water usage, our greenhouse gas emissions from the start of the innovation process, right? It's not a after the fact, consideration. It's about embedding this in the way we do business, the way we innovate, and doing it from the beginning. And I would tell you, this is not about, a sustainability professional saying yes or no to a piece of innovation, but this is about having a fulsome conversation where we can make decisions, knowledgeable of our impact, right? And then also charting a roadmap and a course for making products sustainable over time, right? So you're looking at Life Water. Life Water will be in 100% recycled PET by the end of this year. And that is about innovating on an existing product in our portfolio. Importantly, Bubbly, our sparkling water brand, moved away from PET a couple years ago and went into 100% aluminum, right? So it's about taking our existing portfolio and finding ways to make that portfolio more sustainable and really pushing ourselves hard to say, where are we not moving fast enough? I think there's also an opportunity to lean into new platforms, i.e. you see SodaStream on the page here. we're thinking about ways to build new platforms for our business that, are sustainable by definition, right? So here's a multi-use vessel where we can, again, delight consumers and bring smiles, but do it in a way where we've reduced our plastics use or other single-use containers and packaging in the marketplace. So I think it's embedding it not just in new innovation, new products we're bringing into the market, but how do you innovate a vast and broad portfolio of products that already have resonance with consumers, but we can bring them along this journey of being more sustainable over time. But again, it goes back to, it's got to be embedded in the DNA of how we do business. It can't be an offshoot or a side project. And I would tell you, PepsiCo, with things like sustainable from the start, are certainly moving in that direction. Secondarily, I think my role as Chief Sustainability Officer for North American Beverages, given my background, is another way that we're embedding it in the business. I think many times people think about sustainability as a career, and I think there are very rewarding and important careers to have in sustainability. But more important, and the thing that's going to accelerate this journey within PepsiCo as well as other places, is it's got to get to a competence, right? So we've got to make sure that people that sit in various functions are thinking about sustainability, understand the interconnectedness of packaging choices we make on our greenhouse gas emissions, how we set up our distribution network, right? So it's got to become a competence that lives within each and every function within our company. So it's not just one group of people who are driving this agenda. We will continue to, set the true north with respect to sustainability, but we've got to build the competence throughout the organization to ensure we're always thinking about sustainability as we continue to grow and drive this business forward.
Yeah. So, and Jason, if you think about for other companies whose sustainability practices are maybe more sort of tacked on and less embedded than PepsiCo's, what are your recommendations for sustainability officers or other companies that want sustainability to be more of an embedded part of their business, but aren't quite sure sort of what steps to take to get there?
Sure. Well, I think it starts with a commitment from the top, right? So if you think about our journey in sustainability, and I love where we are, and I love the commitment Ramon, our CEO, has to sustainability. This journey started back in 2006 when Indra rolled out Performance with Purpose. We've evolved that now to Winning with Purpose. But first thing I think any company has to do is recognize, as I said from the top, that this is a journey, right? And it's not one that's going to be achieved quickly, right? So there's got to be real commitment to long-term transformation of the organization, right? So I think that's the first thing, a recognition and acceptance that sustainability doesn't happen overnight. Now, I will say we all, companies of scale, need to understand the urgency of sustainability, but at the same time, we have to understand that the change and embedding in our businesses is not going to happen overnight. The second thing is, I do think it starts with career professionals in sustainability. If you think about the folks who are around PepsiCo, we've got some of the brightest minds, working on climate and water, agriculture, and the various areas we've deemed important for us to push against, right? So you need people who have deep knowledge of the science. They understand how to set up, science-based targets to hold the company accountable to. And then I think it's important then to find ways and champions inside the company who understand the inner workings of how things get done at the company to then partner on this journey. So, it's commitment from the top with an acceptance that it's going to take time. You do need the expertise, right? These are really, really complex problems to get after, and they can't be, call it, hobbies of a few key executives at your company, you need people who can really point you in the right direction. So you need the expertise. And then once you get the expertise, you define, based on whether it's external organizations or whatever mechanism you have for setting science-based targets, then you start to bring in the people inside the company who can help drive these agendas because they understand, like I said, the ways in which the company operates. I would say, to any company pursuing this, it's important to get outside, I would say, outside of your four walls and really tap into the places that you admire, that you think are doing it really well. Because, this road has been charted by many companies. And I think those of us in the sustainability space have a real desire to accelerate change. And that, as I said before, can't just come by a singular company, our personal heroics. There's greater collaboration that has to happen. I talked about our size and our scale, and we're going to reach we're going to reach all the way into our supply chain to drive some of this change. And I think where we are in this journey, if you go back to what I said, it started in 2006. We've got a catalog of learnings that another company that wants to tap into this, that's saying, hey, we're just starting. We'd love to share it, right? Because we know that, one, the urgency of solving a lot of these problems, but two, there's no sense in a company being 5 or 6 years behind if we can accelerate, their integration of sustainability into the business. And I would tell you, without speaking for anybody else in our industry or beyond, I think, companies that are far along on this journey are yearning for, the opportunities to share what we've learned and quite frankly, share the things we've not necessarily done right as learnings for other companies that are starting on this journey. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to it. I would say there's a premium with consumers today that companies figure this out. We often quote a statistic inside the company that, while 63% of consumers don't necessarily make choices based on sustainable brands, once they're loyal to and committed to a brand, they do evaluate where the company is or the brand is with respect to their sustainability journey. So they're using it as a mechanism for deciding which brands to remain loyal to, which brands to potentially give more of their dollars to, because they're doing things that the consumer believes in. And I say that to say, companies who don't spend the time figuring out the authentic voice that they have with their consumers, I think are going to find themselves really challenged over time. So you've got to find a way to embed this in your business pretty quickly.
Yeah. And so you've touched on this a little bit, but can you say more about how you think about your impact outside of PepsiCo's walls and sort of with other stakeholders, whether that be other beverage companies, others in the industry, or a broader set of stakeholders that you think about?
So I guess it comes down to, catalyzing change in the business, right? So inside our four walls, but that ability to catalyze change also goes outside of our four walls, right? So I mentioned the Every Bottle Back campaign that's being led by the American Beverage Association. Super proud of the work we're doing there. So that's impact. And I think that particular campaign is one that, inside of all these companies, we were thinking about this problem to go solve and said, we can't do it alone, right? So we need to engage more broadly, right? So that's an example. If I think about our impact with respect to NGOs, other stakeholders, we want to have a voice with those particular organizations, and we want to hear from them, right? Because they're in a lot of ways, they're bringing insights to us that, within our four walls, we're not necessarily thinking about. At the same time, we bring certain know-how and knowledge to them that says, here's where we think we might be able to be faster, or I think you've misdiagnosed the problem there. So we think it's really important to engage. And then the final thing I would say is governments. I think we do have a really important role to play in terms of understanding what it is governments are trying to accomplish. So if I just look at collection policy in the US, which I said is well below where we'd like it to be or where we need it to be to create the circular economy, the scaled problem there is one that is going to require multi-stakeholder involvement, of which governments are one, right? So we think it's imperative that we have this like 360 view of engagement that allows us, as I said, the real ambition is we want to be a catalyst for change, because we know that, our size, our scale, our reach, can really bring about that level of change. Now, that's the 360 view of stakeholders we're engaging. If I bring you back to another point I made earlier, which is reaching into our supply chain to ensure, we're driving meaningful change throughout our value chain. I'll call it our value chain. And can we show that slide that shows our value chain? This is about reaching in and understanding the impact of what we grow, where we grow it. Are we sharing the best and brightest ideas with the people growing crops for us? Are we ensuring that, the places we source ingredients and products, that these are farms that are contributing to the community? Are we thinking about impacts on, to my earlier point of prosperity, are we thinking about Black and brown farmers or women-run farms in terms of our supply chain? R&D, manufacturing, and packaging. I said it earlier, right? Like, are these folks thinking about sustainability as our R&D partners inside and outside the company? Because we're involved in a couple R&D consortiums outside of the company. Are they thinking about sustainability at the point in which they're designing new ideas around packaging our products, right? So we're going to reach into this value chain to ensure that sustainability is embedded at every point. And I would say, the circularity of this value chain is coming back to what I said, the post-consumption experience of, I just finished a Pepsi. Have we thought about, okay, if we get collection rates to 70, 80, 90% in the US, do we have the manufacturing and packaging infrastructure in the US to be able to process those and bring them back into an economy that then recreates another bottle that delights the consumer? So I think there's the known collaboration within our ecosystem. As I said, collaboration with partners, governments, NGOs. But then there's the work we will do as a company inside of our value chain to ensure sustainability is embedded with all of these partners. So the work is significant in this world outside of our four walls, to bring it back to your question. But I think the only way to solve these very, very big and complex problems requires us to get outside of our four walls. And I like to say, as I mentioned earlier, it's not about individual company heroics anymore, right? These problems are far too sizable. It's about collaboration and mutual problem solving to get after big and complex problems. And that quite frankly sits both inside and outside of our four walls.
For others who might want to think about how to kind of green the supply chain, sort of embed sustainability, as you were saying, further back into the value chain, for those who haven't really figured out how to do that yet, what are some things that they can do to either influence their suppliers or do some of the things that you were describing? Yeah,
so I think one of the first things you have to do is you've got to start with, and this goes back to my point of commitment from the top. You absolutely need to communicate to that supply chain individually the importance of this agenda to the company, right? So our supply chain now knows the commitments we make as a company. So these climate commitments we made are across scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. So we're making commitments now on behalf of this supply chain, right? And it's not just about going in and telling folks, hey, we made these commitments, get on board. Mm-hmm. We've got to bring these subject matter experts, as I said, into our suppliers to have meaningful conversations to ensure they understand the why of what we're doing, right? So I think it starts with like informing that supply chain of the importance and the commitment you've got at the organization. I think the second thing is jointly, we've got to figure out a way to measure and understand the starting point for all those folks in the supply chain. I think, as in business, right, the things that are measured get done. And I think in some of these areas with respect to sustainability, many are particularly within the supply chain where you're dealing with smaller entities. They're not even sure where they are on the journey. Right now, some do, but I think finding a way to understand where are we, at March 31st, 2021, where are we trying to go, and how do we measure those things, over time? So I think it's really getting grounded in the starting point for everybody in that supply chain. And I think the third thing is, I think you've got to be willing to partner and work really hard on joint KPIs that are going to move the needle, right? And I think big companies like PepsiCo, as I said, using our size and scale, have to be willing to work with, these folks in our supply chain. So if I think about scope 3 emissions, we're going to reduce those by, over 40%, right? In this march of reduction by 2030, that has real implications for the folks in our supply chain, because scope 3 is everything that sits outside of our four walls. And we've got to find ways where we've got expertise that they can leverage. We've got to find ways to either build consortiums that can allow, purchasing scale, operating scale in that supply chain, by virtue of PepsiCo being the organizing mechanism. But we also, have to be willing to have some really hard conversations with suppliers that say, here's where we're going, right? And we need your partnership in that, evolution and on this journey. So, I wouldn't necessarily assume in your supply chain there's a real understanding of the commitment and seriousness the company has. I wouldn't assume people know where they are on that journey, and I wouldn't underestimate the help and support, folks in the supply chain are going to need along this journey. But we, quite frankly, have the opportunity, and I say opportunity, not lightly. We have the opportunity to really make big impact and really impact this value chain that we've created over time.
That's fantastic. So you've mentioned, a lot of PepsiCo has a lot of ambitious sustainability goals and sort of an objective to have impact in this space. How do you think about those goals and whether or not there's a conflict or a trade-off with sort of a profit maximization goal? Do you think that that's a trade-off? And if so, how do you think about that?
Yeah, so I would start by saying all capital allocation, resource allocation's a trade-off, right? So to to put sustainability in a bucket of you're creating trade-offs and that's a bad thing within sustainability. I think it's fundamental to business, right? There's always trade-offs. That said, as I said earlier, this really matters to consumers, right? And I'm not forecasting a future of brands who don't engage here. However, I think embracing sustainability in your business is about building resilience in your business model, right? And oftentimes that resilience of your business model is undervalued as we think about return profiles, right? So I think that's super, super important. And if you think about the risk associated with some of these, existential problems we're facing, there's those things need to be valued as well. As I think about my role within PepsiCo, and this might sound cliche, it's a both and, right? We've got to find a way to grow our business. We've got to find a way to drive returns. At the same time, we have to embed sustainability in what we do. And, shame on me if I can't articulate to the organization over time the reason why some of these trade-off decisions are vitally important, right? And, going back to the original point, right? All business decisions are trade-off decisions. There is always an alternative investment to be made, resource to bring to bear. And it's central to what we do. And I think sometimes we look at sustainability and say, oh, it's creating trade-offs, and that's a pejorative, but it really is central to business. And we've got to find a way to grow our business, invest in these wonderful brands that I showed earlier, grow them, bring smiles to our consumers with every sip and every bite. And we got to find a way to do it sustainably over time.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jason. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Sam, who I believe has some questions from the audience.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jason and Vanessa. So at this point, wanted to open up the conversation for audience questions. So could the audience please begin typing their questions in the Zoom Q&A feature? But in the meanwhile, as questions are coming in, I'll go through a few questions I've received from students in the Green Business Club at Columbia Business School, and then go into the audience questions. So I think that the first question was already covered, but beyond, in terms of trade-offs, but kind of another question is beyond trade-offs, beyond profitability trade-offs, are there any other conflicts or tensions that occur when pursuing sustainability goals? For example, if there's any technical, conflicts that arise. Well,
I think, technical conflicts certainly. If you think about bubbly, the example I gave earlier, transitioning from PET to all aluminum, like that's got to work in your supply chain, your manufacturing base. So there are technical things that have to be solved. But what I know to be true about PepsiCo is you put a big problem in front of people and they'll resolve it, right? We're a resilient company like that. We've got hard charging people who figure complex problems out. If I were to say the real trade-off, and really it's not a trade-off as much as it is a decision individuals have to make, is how we go and drive this idea of competence around sustainability throughout organizations like PepsiCo. We need to find ways to have the best and brightest minds working against this integration of sustainability in the business, right? And it's really exciting to be in sustainability today. But I would tell you, going back to this idea of competence, we face challenges, and I think many companies face challenges where someone may view stepping away from a very linear call it finance career, or a very linear marketing career, or a very linear supply chain career, and say, should I really take the step away from, A to B to C to D, to go do an assignment in sustainability and really understand at a deeper level what this agenda is all about, right? And I think companies who figure out a way to build both careers in sustainability, because we need people who have sustainability in their title over time, but simultaneously build this competence more broadly throughout their organization, are going to really win, right? The companies that do both are going to win ultimately. And I say they're going to win ultimately because whether a if you get both right, whether a sustainability executive's in the room or not, sustainability will be part of the conversation, because now people understand why, I'll use an internal term that most companies have, like a stage gate innovation process, why sustainability should be at the very front end of that, why we should be talking about, the greenhouse gas emissions impact of this piece of innovation, right? So I think the real trade-off, and again, this word trade-off in sustainability, again, is generally viewed as negative, but I think it's the real opportunity to transform, the way we plan careers and talent management inside of big companies like PepsiCo, and really unlock the true potential of sustainability as an agent of transformation for big companies. So the financial return trade-offs, and I know you guys have talked capital markets, and we certainly, and I can't emphasize this enough, we certainly need capital investment, throughout, this ecosystem of building a sustainable food system, right? We need more people venturing in the space, both on product, packaging, processing of recycled material, collection of recycled material. We need capital flowing into those areas, no doubt, right? And those are real financial trade-off decisions, but that shouldn't be viewed as I'm going to compromise returns in order to make this investment, right?
Great, thank you for that, Jason.
Sure.
A question we have from the audience is, does government regulation help or hinder business sustainability efforts?
Government regulation help or hinder? So we've got to, here's the reality, right? We sell wonderful products, and we sell them in a range of packages, and government regulation sits outside of what we do each and every day. And enterprises like PepsiCo should thrive or strive to be, great corporate citizens independent of government regulation, right? There's no government regulation today telling us to drive towards recycled content. There's no government regulation today telling us, hey, you need to collect all your bottles. We're doing it because we know it's the right thing to do for our business, for our consumers, for the planet. And if government regulation comes that pushes in that direction, it's something you react to and respond to. I think the good thing is we're a large company that, government regulation we can withstand it. But I would tell you that sits outside of the consideration set we have for this agenda.
Okay, great. So earlier you touched on how sustainability, the sustainability transformation doesn't occur overnight. So a question we have from the audience is, can you speak more to the dissonance between the urgency, of climate change, of the need for sustainability, and the fact that this change won't happen overnight?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think what it creates is a really healthy tension inside of companies, right? And I'll share a story. So had an engagement with some of our partners in R&D, and we were talking about a particular packaging design that we think is kind of a big unlock for us. And the timeline outlined, to me, quite frankly, wasn't one that was acceptable. So, the technology was fantastic. What it would unlock for the company is fantastic. The timeline, however, doesn't necessarily get anybody excited because there's so many iterations of the business in the timeline they were outlining. So I think what the urgency creates is a tension in the room that says, hey, we need to move faster, right? And we need to push harder, and we need to figure out inside the company, what are the roadblocks? What are the barriers to us moving faster? And that is driven home by, like I said, the urgency of the problems we're seeing, right? It's not necessarily, hey, Jason's just going to push us really hard. It's no, we got to solve these problems quickly. And we need to understand these solves in a broader context. So, that's what the urgency does. In terms of the time it takes, like, you've got to continue to be realistic about how you're going to move the needle. And once you figure out, right, so, we will get to 40% reduction by 2030, but then in the next 10 years, we'll get to net zero. So what you have to do is, constantly evaluate where you are on the journey and where you can double down and push harder and push faster. You got to be willing to do that. And that is, this idea of from the top down being fully engaged in this journey to say, hey, we can do more, we can move faster. But you can't push people beyond the point of what's practical and safe to do.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of urgency there. So another question we have is, are you working with TerraCycle or any companies like that who are working with consumers to reuse their plastics, being an important consideration, and kind of generally how you view kind of collaborating with companies that are potentially reusing plastics?
Yeah, so we do work with TerraCycle. I mentioned the American Beverage Association, Every Bottle Back. We're also engaged in the recycling partnership. So yeah, we are engaged across the board with lots of different organizations, and I think this is one where it's a whole of our energy to solve these problems. So I think some of these ideas are great ideas. The ability to scale is one that we always have to question, and we've got to get after the scaled solutions at the same time we engage in things that are up and coming and new ideas and new companies. So it's both and. Because as I said earlier, the size and magnitude of these problems to solve are massive, and they're not going to be solved by a company like PepsiCo saying we're making one bet to solve this one problem. We've got to make multiple bets to solve these problems, and we've got to engage. To my earlier point, we've got to engage and work with up and coming companies that have promise, and continue to emphasize to them the importance of scale over time.
Yeah, and on that point, kind of working with up and coming companies, kind of curious to hear at PepsiCo, what is the approach? Is it a lot of incoming from like partnership from these companies, or is PepsiCo kind of searching and reaching out to a lot of these promising companies for potential partnerships?
Yeah, it's both. It's both. I think we're a company that, if you just look at our history, put sustainability aside, we're a company that has grown both through, internal, efforts and initiatives. But we've also been a company, as I said, I started with the company in M&A, looking at external companies. That was more on the portfolio side. But yes, we're a company that looks inside and outside. We take inbound calls, but we're also kind of willing to go out and say, this might be a space that's interesting for us to put some capital in, to achieve some scale benefit over time. So yes, we're totally open to inbound calls. And if we send an email or a call, please answer, get back to us, because we're serious about, kind of driving this agenda. And we know that's not only going to happen inside of our four walls, it's going to happen, in partnership and in collaboration and sometimes through investment.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Another question we've received is related to sustainability decisions at PepsiCo. So question is, how involved is the CEO and the rest of the C-suite in these sustainability decisions? How is it embedded throughout the company?
Yeah, so, I'll stop short of speaking for how embedded it is, but I would tell you, Ramon is as committed to sustainability as anybody in the organization, right? And, Ramon sees our role as a company as using our size and scale to drive a sustainable food system, point blank, right? And all you have to do is listen to any of the recent interviews he's done, things he's published. He's committed to this. We talk about it as a senior leadership team across disciplines, across functions. And he's as versed on these topics as anyone. Now, I say that to say, he's got people who are responsible for driving this agenda, and he trusts us to do that. But no one should question his commitment, our senior team's commitment to sustainability, and the fact that we publish a sustainability report annually on our progress should show that our company, our leadership is absolutely committed to this. So I hope that answers the question in terms of their commitment, broadly to this agenda.
I'll wrap up the audience Q&A segment. So I'll hand it back to you, Vanessa, for a final panel question.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sam. So Jason, as sort of a closing question, you probably know that there's a number of students and professionals on this call who are probably interested in either entering or transitioning into the sustainability sector in some way. Can you tell us a little bit about where you see there being opportunities right now for careers in sustainability, or any other tips or recommendations more broadly that you might have for those in the audience who might be wanting to get into this field?
Yeah, so I'd say, unapologetically, first starting point should be to talk to us at PepsiCo about opportunities. As I said earlier, right, we need the best and brightest minds working on this agenda inside our company. I think I've outlined the engagement we've got outside the company to drive this agenda, and would hope that people would see PepsiCo as an exciting place to embark on a career in sustainability. I think the second thing I would mention, as I said earlier, is, just because sustainability is not in your title doesn't mean you can't drive sustainability in your organization, in your function, right? So this idea of careers in sustainability has to be complemented by competence in sustainability. And every organization, PepsiCo notwithstanding, needs to find ways to build that. And I would say, if you've got an interest in it, the democratization of information in this space is wonderful, right? You can learn as much as you want to learn about the space, and then you bring that to bear, whether you're, the finance executive, a marketing executive. You start to probe on and question, what do we do? How do we do it? And are we doing it in the most sustainable way possible, right? So I think it's critically important that, broadly, and I hope at Columbia, we lead the way, we start to break down these walls of the only way to have sustainable impact is by having a career in sustainability, and start to think about that being complemented by competence in sustainability. So it's probably a long way of me, not giving a lot of advice, but we start with us at PepsiCo, and then let's talk about where you can fit into our organization.
Jason, you're going to get a lot of emails from students. Thank you for taking them. That's so appreciated. Jason, so much appreciation for you and Professor Vanessa Burbano and Sam. Really terrific, insightful discussion this morning, and really wonderful to hear all the amazing work that PepsiCo is doing at such a large company. The work that you do has such influence and impact in signaling where innovation can happen in the sustainability space. So again, thank you to everyone, all of our keynote speakers and volunteers, our coaches, our faculty, and our staff in particular. Big shout out to Diana Rambo and Hannah on our TAMA team, who has just done a tremendous job in helping us pull this series together. I think you'll hopefully agree with us that we've really tried to provide a really broad perspective on this field of capital for good, both how capital is being aggregated and sourced, and also the uses of capital and some of the more innovative things that are happening in the social and environmental space. And so this webinar series this year has really been a hallmark in terms of exploring what business leaders are doing to tackle pressing social and environmental challenges. So, we hope that you had a chance to dip into some of these other topics we've covered, from philanthropy through to social ventures, through to fund managers. This morning you heard from what I think well coined as an incubator of environmental, social, and governance investing. And in some sense, this panel that we've just heard from is looking at a deep dive at one company and some of the work that is going on within one organization. And so both that breadth of perspective and the depth will hopefully help you all as you think about your next steps, whether you're starting out in your careers or mid-range or a little further on. For those of you that have missed some of the programming that we've hosted throughout this academic year, please Google the TAMA Center podcast channel. When we have permission from speakers to record, that's where you'll find those recordings. So Google the YouTube channel for TAMA Center, and you'll see all those recordings there. And the conversation continues. We also have a podcast. So you go to your favorite podcast platform and just Google TAMA Center or Capital for Good. There's also another series of terrific content, and there's actually going to be a deep dive into ESG investing coming later this calendar year. So with that, we hope that the conference has highlighted some terrific opportunities. We are very hopeful that we need your time and talent and intelligence and insight to contribute wherever you find yourself located in this space. And we look forward to seeing you at future programming around capital for good and social enterprise and social impact. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.